Welcome back to the Newsfeed. I'm Tammy Ngubeni. Now, as businesses are gradually reopening, more employees are returning to the workplace in uncertain times. While embracing a new way of working during the coronavirus pandemic, it's only natural that many people will find themselves feeling rather anxious and perhaps a bit stressed as well. Now, to talk about how to cope with uncertainty at work during these uncertain times, I'm joined by Helene Smuts, and Helene is the founder of Accredo Growth. Helene, thank you for your time today. Now, I'm wondering, when we talk about stress, what exactly are we talking about? Is this not just the normal pressure that comes from life?
So it's interesting. It's I think there's the normal pressure of what comes from life, but then also the added things that we've all been experiencing: the lockdown, the homeschooling, then now the idea of having to go back to work, not being sure what's going, or being quite uncertain as to who's going to be at work with you, who's going to make you sick, are you going to make someone sick? So it's a little bit more than just the normal like life stuff that happens for us. And we also we engage with it differently based on the type of people that we are. So we're all experiencing the fact that we might have to go back to work, but based on our personality, how we react to that can be quite severely different.
And what are the various reactions that one could give to stress, specifically during this particular time?
Yeah. So I think if you look at if I can link it back to the 4 main personality types, we can go all the way to 72 different types, but just for a high level.
Yeah, let's stick with the 4.
Yeah. So if you think about the driver type, they're very goal-orientated. Under stress, they can become very autocratic. So it's my way or their highway, and that's the behavior that comes through. For an analytical type, for example, what they're starting to do is they're starting to avoid, so they pull back and don't necessarily want to engage in personal drama or emotionalness. And then an amiable, for example, what they do is they become quite stubborn and it can be very difficult for them to forgive. And they just say yes for the sake of saying yes, to get rid of the environment or the idea. And then the last style, for example, expressive, is they have almost like volcanic eruptions, and then they calm down again. But there's a lot of emotion that goes with it. And if we start to see these different behaviors, then you can see that someone is going from what we call eustress, the positive stress, to the distress, which is really creating that anxiety that can eventually, if not dealt with, turn into burnout.
We'll focus on those various emotions and different reactions in a moment, but I'm caught by the positive stress that you spoke about. How does one then, what is that, and how does one then differentiate a positive stress from a destructive stress?
So positive stress, for example, is, if I can use an interview like this, is I do my research, I prepare well for it, and I feel that I'm being kept on my toes. So I'm really doing what I need to do in order to deliver the job well. Where the distress is where someone can go from being stretched, a healthy stretch, into strain. And that is then where, for example, your legs go numb, or there's an upset stomach. And then your head starts playing tricks on you, to the point where you, for example, get so sick that you cancel a meeting or you cancel an interview. So it's really debilitating instead of keeping you on your toes. And the eustress is really healthy, and the distress is where we often get stuck in. That really creates all these bad behaviors.
So one peaks performance, the other one basically debilitates the performance. But let's talk about the places where this type of stress is then exhibited and these behaviors. Would you find a person exhibiting this change of behavior within the workspace with their colleagues at work, or do you find that it's only when they get home that then they start becoming grumpy, that they start becoming teary, or whatever way they react?
Yeah. You know what, I don't think there's a specific answer. It depends on the person. So you can experience something at work, but then you act it out at home, or something can go on in your private life, but unfortunately you act it out at work. So, and some people have the ability to keep the stress almost in a box where it happened. But for majority of people, we do have, just the iceberg behind me now, we do have what's going on below the surface, and we carry that with us. So it's really to then tap into that form of empathy, of trying to understand what's going on for the person as to why they are behaving the way they do. Because it might be something that happened outside of the area where you're engaging with that person. It's not just an either or. I think it depends on the person.
I guess there are two aspects, to dealing with stress. First, from a personal perspective as the actual individual who's going through the stress. And then there is the other aspect, which is perhaps from a leadership perspective, what leaders and employees or other employers would be able to do to help an individual. Let's start with the first.
Yeah.
As an individual, how do you best prepare yourself for change, which you know is inevitable? You know you're going into a new environment, you're not feeling safe, you don't know where this coronavirus could be, who could have it, and just very uncertain, even about your job and having a job. There's so many people are being retrenched, so you go to work, but you don't even know if you'll still have a job come next week or even next month. How does one best prepare themselves for such stressful periods so that they don't actually debilitate you?
So the way we work with our clients with regards to that is we look at first of, why do you think you are feeling stressed about it? So it's almost like going into your own analyzer. So understanding what about it is it that you know and what don't you know? And then what about the situation do you have control over and don't you have control over? And just that analysis almost kind of clarifies it for yourself in your head in terms of these are now the things that I need to focus on that I don't have control over, where I can make tweaks, and what about it can I do to make my environment better for me? But it really, in my belief, it starts with a self-analysis of why am I worried about this, or why am I uncertain about this? And when you understand that, then you can actually think, okay, now what can I do about it? And yeah, that's from an individual point of view. I already want to jump the gun into the
And do you recommend writing all of this down? Because sometimes it can all just get stuck in your head and feel like it's a bit too much.
Absolutely. There's something that happens with you, like even if you just make a T process in terms of what do I know, what don't I know, just that knowledge of, oh, you know what, in this area where I was so worried, there's only about 3 things that I'm not 100% sure of, and this is what I can do. But what happens is, because it's 4 different things that we worry about going back to work, we worry about homeschooling, we worry about the fact that one of our children needs to go back to school and we don't know what the security measures are. And that becomes like a mushroom effect in our heads. So by writing down what do we know, what don't we know for each of those things, we can actually start building a strategy to deal with it. So yeah, I believe writing down helps a lot.
And so let's look now from the perspective of the employer and from HR.
Yeah.
How do you best support your employees as they come back to work, and how do you identify those who may be struggling a bit?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that comes up for me when you ask this question is it's about seeing the person as an individual, because the tendency is also that we treat everyone the same, and we think that everyone's going to have the same type of stress. But again, based on our personalities, we experience stress differently, and certain things can create stress and others can't. So for me, it's really about digging into who is in my team, what is their behavior like, having real conversations around what is concerning you at the moment, what aren't you worried about, and where do you need support from me? It doesn't mean that the leader always has to do everything for their employee, don't get me wrong, but it's about creating that connection and understanding of, for you as an individual, what can I do for you? And what environment can I create for you so that you can show up motivated and that you can have less stress in the workplace? Well, so it really boils down to lots of conversations.
And just really being present in the moment, and it sounds like having those very honest conversations with yourself as well as your team. Yeah. Helen, thank you so much for that insight, as well as those tips that I hope have been of benefit to so many who are finding themselves stressed as they go back to work and dealing with so many moving parts and variables. Well, thank you so much. That's Helene Smuts there, and she is the founder of Credo Growth. Now, the